The queen was suddenly attacked by a demon, but the king threw his only weapon into the air. It ended up piercing his own body. The king's body instantly turned to stone. He sank to the bottom of the sea with the sacred sword. This left a deep trauma on the 3-year-old prince. 20 years passed quickly. The water level outside the castle suddenly dropped rapidly. Overnight, the riverbed completely dried up. A sword was lodged in one of the rocks. All the soldiers tried to pull the sword out, but not a single one succeeded. The king recognized the sword immediately. This was the sword of the previous king, Uther. The king suddenly felt uneasy. He immediately went to consult the water demon. That's when he learned that Uther's son Arthur was still alive. If Arthur pulled out the sword, everyone would know that Arthur was the rightful heir. So the king immediately ordered all young men to come and try to pull the sword. Arthur was among them. He had no idea about the truth. The moment Arthur touched the sword, he began to feel pain. Arthur quickly let go in fear. The soldiers nearby didn't notice anything unusual. Instead, they mocked him to leave if he couldn't do it. Arthur ignored them. He reached out with both hands and grabbed the sword again. Something miraculous happened. The sacred sword suddenly emitted a white light. Even the ground began to shake. Arthur kept pulling. He pulled the sacred sword out as everyone watched in shock. The king in the castle sensed what was happening. He ordered his soldiers to capture Arthur immediately. But before the soldiers could approach, Arthur collapsed on the spot, unable to control the sword's power. When he woke up, he found himself at an execution ground. Arthur had no power to resist. He could only let them push him onto the chopping block. At this critical moment, a sorceress cast her magic. She controlled an eagle to disrupt the execution. The king also suddenly became dizzy. He could only retreat to the castle under his guards' protection. Then 2 strong men rushed out from the crowd. They knocked down the blocking guards and rescued Arthur. They worked together with the sorceress in blue robes. They finally jumped off a cliff and escaped the pursuit. Arthur was brought into a mysterious cave. He learned that his rescuers were all his father's former followers. They had been hiding in the mountains for years to find Arthur and to overthrow the king's tyrannical rule. But the sudden change was hard for Arthur to accept. He didn't want to be any savior. He just wanted to find a safe place to live a quiet life. So he went to the cliff and threw the sacred sword into the lake. Then Arthur ran wildly into the forest, trying to calm himself down. Arthur finally collapsed in a swamp. Suddenly a hand reached out and pulled him into the lake. This was the legendary Lady of the Lake. Arthur struggled desperately, but the lady made him see visions of the future. If Arthur refused to accept the sacred sword, the king would turn all cities into ruins. The human world would suffer devastation. He had to take up the sword and save the human world.